Samuel Brennan dropped to his knees in the blood-stained snow. His hands, the same hands that had failed to save his dying daughter 3 years ago, now pressed against the pregnant woman's frozen cheek. She wasn't breathing. 3 children huddled behind the overturned wagon, watching him with hollow eyes. "Don't you dare," Sam whispered. "Don't you dare die on me." The smallest girl began to cry, and somewhere in the blizzard behind them, the men who had done this were coming back. If you want to see how this family survives, subscribe to our channel and follow their story to the very end. Comment your city below so I can see how far this story has traveled. Wyoming Territory, November 1878. The wind cut through Samuel Brennan's coat like a blade made of ice. He pulled his collar higher and urged his horse forward through the knee-deep snow. 3 days he'd been riding through this frozen hell, trying to outrun the memories that followed him everywhere. Emma's face, her small hand going limp in his. "Stop it," he muttered to himself. "Just stop." His horse, a gray mare named Dust, snorted and tossed her head. She smelled something on the wind, something wrong. Sam reined her in and listened. At first, nothing. Just the howl of the blizzard and the creak of frozen branches. Then he heard it. Faint. Almost swallowed by the storm. A child crying. Every instinct told him to keep riding. He was a blacksmith now, not a doctor. Not anymore. He'd given that up when his skills had proven worthless against the fever that took his wife and daughter. 3 years of wandering from town to town, fixing horseshoes and wagon wheels, never staying long enough to matter to anyone. That was how he survived. By not caring. But the crying continued. High and thin and desperate. Damn it all to hell. Sam turned Dust toward the sound. He found the wagon at the bottom of a shallow ravine. It had rolled probably when the horses bolted. One horse lay dead in the traces, its neck twisted at an impossible angle. The other was gone, vanished into the blizzard. 3 bodies lay scattered in the snow. A man. A woman. A boy, maybe 12 years old. All of them shot. Sam dismounted slowly, his hand moving to the Colt at his hip. His eyes swept the ravine, searching for movement, for threat. Nothing. Whoever had done this was gone. The crying came from behind the overturned wagon. Sam approached carefully, boots crunching through the crust of ice. He came around the wagon's corner and stopped. 2 children huddled together against the broken wheel. A girl, maybe 10, with brown hair matted with dried blood. Not her blood, Sam realized. Someone else's. She held a smaller boy against her chest, maybe 6 years old. He was the one crying, but no sound came from his open mouth. Just tears streaming down his cheeks and his body shaking with silent sobs. The girl looked up at Sam with eyes that had seen too much. "He can't talk," she said. Her voice was flat, dead. "Not since they shot Mama and Papa." Sam crouched down to their level, moving slowly so he wouldn't spook them. "I ain't gonna hurt you. You understand I ain't one of them." The girl studied him for a long moment. "That's what the last man said. Right before he shot my brother." Sam felt his stomach clench. "The boy who's lying out there, that was your brother?" "William. He was 12. He tried to fight them." "How many were there?" 4. Maybe 5. The girl's arms tightened around the silent boy. "They took everything. Money, food, guns. Then they shot everyone anyway." "Why didn't they shoot you?" The girl's expression didn't change. "We hid. Under the wagon. Henry and me. We didn't make a sound. Not even when Mama screamed." Sam closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, the girl was still watching him with that terrible, knowing gaze. "What's your name?" he asked. "Martha. Martha Price. This is Henry. He's my brother." She paused. "My only brother now." Sam looked at Henry. The boy had stopped crying, but his eyes were fixed on something far away. Something only he could see. Shock. Sam recognized. Maybe something worse. I'm Sam. Sam Brennan. He stood and extended his hand to Martha. Come on, we can't stay here. Storm's getting worse. Martha didn't move. Where would we go? Nearest town is Miller's Crossing, maybe 15 miles east. I'll take you there. Find you somewhere safe. There ain't nowhere safe. Martha's voice cracked for the first time, revealing the terrified child beneath the brave mask. There ain't nowhere safe for children like us. Sam didn't have an answer for that. He'd seen enough orphan trains, enough workhouses, enough children sold to mines and factories to know she was probably right, but he couldn't leave them here to freeze. Maybe not, he said quietly. But I'm going to try anyway. That's all any of us can do. He held out his hand again. This time Martha took it. They'd been riding for less than an hour when Sam spotted the second wagon. This one was still upright, stopped in a small clearing between two ridges. The horses were alive but standing still, heads down against the wind. No movement from inside the wagon. Sam reined Dust to a halt. Martha sat behind him, her thin arms wrapped around his waist. Henry sat in front, cradled against Sam's chest, still silent and unresponsive. Stay here, Sam said. Don't move. He dismounted and approached the wagon slowly. The canvas covering was torn, flapping in the wind. Snow had piled up on the seat undisturbed. Hello? He called. Anyone alive in there? No answer. Sam climbed up and pulled back the canvas. Inside, a woman lay curled on her side, one arm wrapped protectively around two children. A girl, maybe 7, and a boy, 4 or 5. All three were still. No, Sam breathed. No, no, no. He reached for the woman's neck, searching for a pulse. There. Weak. Barely there, but present. The woman's eyes fluttered open. Brown eyes clouded with fever and exhaustion. She looked up at Sam without recognition. Daniel, she whispered. Daniel, I'm so cold. I ain't Daniel, ma'am. My name is Sam. I'm gonna help you. The woman's hand shot out and grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. My children. Are my children? Sam looked at the two small bodies pressed against her. The girl was shivering. The boy's breath came in shallow gasps. Alive. Both alive. They're breathing. All of you are. But we need to get you warm. There's another one. The woman's grip tightened. Another child. Ruby. She was sleeping in the back. Is she... Sam's heart sank. He hadn't seen anyone else in the wagon. He moved deeper into the cramped space, pushing aside blankets and supplies. There, in the far corner, a tiny form wrapped in a torn piece of fabric. A girl, maybe 4 years old, dark hair, darker skin. Mexican Sam, guessed or half. She was curled into a ball, completely still. Sam touched her cheek. Ice cold. But when his fingers made contact, the girl's eyes flew open. She screamed, "Mama, Mama! Easy, easy." Sam pulled back his hand. "I ain't gonna hurt you, I promise." The girl kept screaming high and piercing. Behind him, Sam heard the other children stirring, the 7-year-old starting to cry, the 4-year-old calling for his mother. The pregnant woman tried to sit up and collapsed back, gasping. "Please," she said. "Please, Ruby doesn't understand. She only speaks a little English. Her mother died 2 days ago. Bandits. The same ones who killed my husband 3 months ago. They came back. They finished what they started." Sam's jaw tightened. "Same men who attacked the Price family." "I don't know. Maybe. There's a gang operating in these parts. Everyone knows about them. Nobody can stop them." Sam looked at the terrified little girl still screaming in the corner. He thought of Martha and Henry waiting outside in the cold. 5 children now. 5 children who had lost everything. And one pregnant woman who looked like she might not survive the night. What's your name, ma'am? Caroline. Caroline Whitmore. Mrs. Whitmore, I'm going to be straight with you. You're in bad shape. Your children are in bad shape. I got 2 more orphans outside who are in bad shape. We're 15 miles from the nearest town. There's a blizzard coming, and you can't travel. Caroline's eyes met his. Despite the fever, despite the exhaustion, there was steel in that gaze. What are you saying? I'm saying we need to find shelter. Real shelter. Somewhere we can hole up until this storm passes and you're strong enough to move. There's a cabin. Caroline's voice was fading. 3 miles north, abandoned mining cabin. Daniel and I, we passed it on the way out. Should still be standing. Can you tell me how to find it? Follow the creek. It's on a ridge. You'll see the chimney. Her eyes were closing. Sam grabbed her shoulder. Mrs. Whitmore, Caroline, stay with me. My children, she whispered. Promise me, if I don't make it, promise me you'll take care of my children. Sam's throat constricted. He saw Emma's face again, heard her voice. Papa, don't let go. Papa, I'm scared. You're gonna make it, he said roughly. You hear me? You're gonna make it because those kids need you, so don't you dare give up. Caroline's hand found his. Her fingers were ice cold, but her grip was surprisingly strong. Who are you? She asked. Nobody. Just a blacksmith passing through. No. Her eyes searched his face. You're more than that. I can see it. Before Sam could respond, the 7-year-old girl appeared at her mother's side. Mama, Mama, wake up. I'm awake, Grace. I'm right here. I'm cold, Mama, and Ben won't stop crying. Caroline looked at Sam with desperate eyes. Please, help us. Sam stared at her for a long moment. He thought of all the reasons he should leave, all the ways this could go wrong. He was one man with 1 horse and no supplies. He couldn't save these people. He couldn't save anyone. He couldn't save Emma. But Emma was dead. These children were alive. I'll find the cabin, he heard himself say. I'll get you there, all of you. He didn't promise they would survive. He'd learned the hard way that some promises couldn't be kept. But he could try. That was all Martha had asked for. Someone who would try. Sam climbed out of the wagon and found Martha watching him with those ancient eyes. There's more of them, ain't there? A woman. 3 children. One of them doesn't speak English. They're in bad shape. Martha looked at Henry, still silent, still lost in whatever darkness had claimed him. Then she looked back at Sam. We're all in bad shape, mister. That don't mean we stop fighting. Sam felt something shift in his chest, something that had been frozen for 3 years, slowly beginning to crack. No, he said quietly. It don't. He unhitched the horses from Caroline's wagon and tied them behind Dust. Then he went back inside and carefully lifted Grace and Ben, wrapping them in every blanket he could find. Ruby refused to let him touch her, so he backed away and let Martha climb in. Her name's Ruby, Sam said. She's scared. See if you can calm her down. Martha nodded and moved toward the tiny girl. Hola, she said carefully. Me llamo Martha. ¿Estás a salvo? Ruby's screaming stopped. She stared at Martha with huge wet eyes. Mama, she whispered. No, sweetheart, but I'm going to take care of you. Okay? Just like I take care of Henry. Ruby looked at Henry, who had been placed on the wagon floor, still staring at nothing. Something in her expression shifted. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. She reached out and took Henry's hand. For the first time, Henry's eyes focused. He looked at Ruby, and though he didn't speak, didn't make a sound, his fingers curled around hers. Sam watched this exchange from the wagon entrance. 2 broken children finding each other in the wreckage. Mister! Martha's voice pulled him back. The lady! She ain't waking up! Sam turned to Caroline. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow and rapid. Her hand had fallen from her swollen belly. He pressed his fingers to her neck again. The pulse was weaker now, thready, fading. "No," Sam said. "Not yet. Not like this." He grabbed the reins and pulled himself onto Dust's back. "Hold on to something. All of you. We're riding hard." The blizzard swallowed them as they pushed north. Sam could barely see 10 feet ahead, but he followed the frozen creek like Caroline had said, trusting that she had told him true. The children didn't make a sound. Even the youngest seemed to understand that silence was survival. After what felt like hours, Sam spotted it through the driving snow, a chimney standing dark against the white sky. The cabin. He'd never seen anything more beautiful. The cabin was small, maybe 15 feet by 20, but it was solid. Stone foundation, thick log walls, a roof that still held despite years of neglect. Sam kicked in the door and carried Caroline inside, laying her on the bare wooden floor. "Martha," he called, "get the children in here, now!" The girl moved with efficiency that would have impressed a soldier. She carried Ben, guided Grace by the hand, and somehow convinced Ruby and Henry to follow. Sam found old wood stacked in a corner, dry enough to burn. He worked quickly, his hands moving from memory, building a fire that crackled to life within minutes. Warmth. Finally warmth. He turned back to Caroline. She hadn't moved. Her face was gray, her lips tinged with blue. Sam knelt beside her. His hands hovered over her body, trembling. "I can't do this. I'm not a doctor anymore. I'm not anything." But his hands moved anyway, checking her pulse, feeling her forehead, pressing gently on her swollen belly. The baby kicked against his palm. Still alive. The baby was still alive. "Don't do this," Sam whispered. "Don't make me watch another one die. Please, I can't. I can't do it again." Caroline's eyes opened. Barely, just slits of brown in a pale face. "My children," she breathed. "They're safe, all of them. They're right here." A tear slid down her cheek. "I can feel her. The baby. She's fighting." "Then you fight too. You hear me. You fight." Caroline's hand found his again. I don't even know you." "Doesn't matter. I'm here, and I ain't leaving." The fire crackled. Snow pounded against the walls. 5 children huddled together near the hearth, watching with wide eyes as the stranger who had saved them tried to save the woman who was all some of them had left. And Sam Brennan, the man who had run from death for 3 years, finally stopped running. He looked at the children, at Grace and Ben crying silently, at Ruby clutching Henry's hand, at Martha standing guard over all of them with that fierce protective expression. He looked at Caroline fighting for every breath. "I used to be a doctor," he said quietly. The words came hard, like pulling thorns from his own flesh. Before I lost everything." Martha's eyes widened. "You can save her." Sam didn't answer. He couldn't promise that. He'd made that mistake once before, but he could try. "I need hot water," he said. "Clean cloth, anything you can find." Martha nodded and moved immediately, already taking charge, already becoming the leader these children needed. Sam turned back to Caroline. Her pulse was steadier now, the warmth starting to work, but she was far from safe. "Stay with me," he said. "You stay with me, Caroline Whitmore. Your children need you. All of them. Even the ones who ain't yours by blood." Caroline's lips moved. Sam leaned closer to hear. "Thank you," she whispered. "For stopping. For not riding past." Sam thought of the moment he'd heard Martha's crying on the wind. The moment he'd almost ignored it. "I almost did," he admitted. "I almost kept going." "But you didn't." "No, I didn't." Caroline's eyes closed again, but this time there was peace in her expression. Trust. Something Sam hadn't seen directed at him in a very long time. Outside, the blizzard raged. Inside, a fire burned against the darkness. And in that abandoned cabin with 5 orphans and a dying woman and a baby fighting to be born, Sam Brennan began to remember what it meant to care about something again. He didn't know if they would survive the night, but for the first time in 3 years, he wanted to find out. Tolan. The fire had burned down to embers when Caroline's fever broke. Sam hadn't slept. He sat beside her through the long hours of the night, changing the cold cloths on her forehead, checking her pulse every few minutes, watching the shallow rise and fall of her chest, like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to the earth. The children had finally surrendered to exhaustion. Martha lay nearest the fire, her body curled protectively around Henry and Ruby. Grace and Ben slept on the other side, tangled together like puppies seeking warmth. Their faces, even in sleep, carried the weight of everything they'd lost. Sometime before dawn, Caroline's eyes opened. "Water," she whispered. Sam grabbed the tin cup he'd filled hours ago and held it to her lips. She drank slowly, her throat working with effort. The children. Sleeping. All of them. Caroline turned her head searching until she found Grace and Ben. A sob caught in her throat. I thought I was going to die. I thought they'd be alone." "You ain't dead yet, Mrs. Whitmore." "Caroline." She looked back at him. "If you're going to save my life, you can at least call me by my name." Sam almost smiled. Almost. "Caroline, then, how do you feel?" "Like I've been trampled by horses and left in a snowbank." She tried to sit up and gasped, her hand flying to her belly. "The baby. Is the baby—" "Still kicking. Strong kicks, too. Felt them myself." Caroline's shoulders sagged with relief. Her hand stayed on her swollen stomach, protective, fierce. "She's a fighter, just like her father was." "Your husband, Daniel. What happened to him?" The light in Caroline's eyes dimmed. 3 months ago. We were traveling from Kansas. Daniel wanted to start fresh in Montana. His brother has a ranch there. We had everything we owned in that wagon. Money, supplies, tools. She paused, and Sam saw her jaw tighten against the memory. They came at night. 4 men. Daniel tried to fight them off, but he wasn't. He wasn't a fighting man. He was a schoolteacher. He believed in words, not guns. Her voice cracked. They shot him right in front of Grace, right in front of his daughter. Then they took everything and left us with nothing. How did you survive? Kindness of strangers mostly. A farmer let us stay in his barn for a month. A preacher gave us food. Another family, the Santiagos, they were traveling the same direction. Maria Santiago, she was Ruby's mother. She took us in, shared what little they had. The Santiagos. They're the ones who... Caroline nodded. 2 days ago. The same men came back. I recognized one of them. The leader. He has a scar here. She drew a line down her left cheek. He remembered us too. Said he'd come to finish what he started. Sam's hands curled into fists. What happened? Maria hid Ruby under the wagon, same as we did with Grace and Ben. She told the girl not to make a sound no matter what. Then she... Caroline's voice broke completely. She walked out to face them. Drew their attention away. They killed her. Shot her husband too. But Ruby stayed hidden. Stayed silent. Just like her mama told her. Sam looked across the cabin to where Ruby slept, her small hand still clutched in Henry's. 4 years old. Watching her mother die to save her. When it was over, Caroline continued, I found Ruby under the wagon. She wouldn't come out. Wouldn't speak. I had to crawl under there with her, hold her for hours before she'd let me carry her away. And then you kept going. Alone? What choice did I have? Stay there and freeze. Wait for them to come back. Caroline's chin lifted. I have children depending on me, Mr. Brennan. Giving up ain't an option. Sam felt something tighten in his chest. He'd known this woman for less than a day, but already he recognized the steel in her spine. The same steel that had kept Martha Price alive. The same steel that was keeping all of them alive. "Sam," he said quietly. "What?" "You said if you're going to save my life." "I should call you by your name. Works both ways. It's Sam." Caroline studied his face for a long moment. Whatever she saw there seemed to satisfy her. "Sam, then. Thank you. For everything. Don't thank me yet. We're stuck in this cabin with barely any food, a blizzard that won't quit, and you're in no condition to travel. We ain't out of this by a long shot. But we're alive. That's more than I expected when I closed my eyes last night." The sun rose slowly, fighting its way through the gray clouds and driving snow. Sam left Caroline resting and took stock of their situation. The cabin had a root cellar. He found it beneath a trapdoor in the corner, half collapsed, but still functional. Inside were a few jars of preserved vegetables left behind by whoever had lived here before. Not much, but something. Outside, he collected snow to melt for water. The blizzard had eased slightly, but the temperature had dropped even further. His breath hung in the air like smoke, and his fingers went numb within minutes. When he came back inside, Martha was awake. She sat by the fire feeding it small pieces of wood with careful precision. Her eyes tracked Sam as he entered, watchful assessing. "Found some food," Sam said. "Pickled beets, canned beans. Maybe enough for a few days if we're careful." Martha nodded. "The horses?" "Sheltered in a lean-to out back. They'll survive if the storm doesn't last too long." "And if it does?" Sam didn't answer. He didn't need to. Martha was old enough to understand what would happen if the storm trapped them here for weeks. They'd run out of food, run out of firewood. One by one they'd start dying, and there wasn't a damn thing anyone could do about it. "We need to find more food," Martha said. "Real food. Meat. There's game in these woods. Deer, rabbit. Maybe even elk if we're lucky." "Can you hunt?" Sam thought of the Colt at his hip, the rifle still strapped to Dust's saddle. He hadn't fired a weapon at a living creature in years, but the skill was still there, buried under layers of rust and grief. "Yeah, I can hunt." Martha stood and walked to where his saddlebags lay against the wall. She rifled through them until she found what she was looking for. The medical kit. She brought it back and held it out to him. "You should check on Mrs. Whitmore. Proper check, I mean. Not just feeling her forehead and hoping for the best." Sam stared at the kit. He hadn't opened it in 3 years. Hadn't wanted to. The memories attached to those instruments were too sharp, too painful. "I ain't a doctor anymore," he said. "You were last night. When you thought she was dying, you sure acted like a doctor." "That was different." "How?" Sam didn't have an answer. Martha pressed the kit into his hands. "My mama used to say that God gives us gifts for a reason. Said it's a sin to waste them." She paused. "You got a gift, Mr. Sam. I saw it last night. And right now, Mrs. Caroline needs that gift more than you need to run from it." Sam looked down at the worn leather case. His initials were embossed on the corner. S.E.B. Samuel Edward Brennan. He'd had it made special when he graduated from medical school in Philadelphia, full of hope and purpose, and the naive belief that he could save anyone. Emma had loved to play with it. She'd pretend to be a doctor using his stethoscope, to listen to her doll's heartbeats wrapping their arms in bandages, pronouncing them healed with a serious expression that made him laugh every time. The memory hit him like a fist to the chest. "Mr. Sam..." Martha's voice was soft. "You okay?" Sam closed his eyes. Drew a breath. Let it out slowly. "Yeah," he said. "I'm okay." He opened the kit. The instruments were still there, nestled in their velvet-lined compartments. Stethoscope, scalpel, forceps, suture kit, all the tools of a trade he'd abandoned when they'd failed him most. He walked over to Caroline and knelt beside her. "I need to examine you," he said. Properly. Make sure you and the baby are both stable. Caroline nodded, her eyes never leaving his face. Do what you need to do. Sam placed the stethoscope against her chest. Her heartbeat filled his ears. Steady, strong, faster than he'd like, but not dangerously so. He moved the instrument lower to her swollen belly. Listened. There. The baby's heartbeat. Quick and rhythmic. Healthy. Baby sounds good, he said. Heart rate is normal. Position feels right. How much longer do you think before she comes? Sam did the calculations in his head. 7 months, Caroline had said. That meant at least 6 weeks, maybe more. Month and a half, maybe 2. Hard to say exactly. Caroline's face fell. We can't stay here that long. No, we can't. Sam sat back on his heels. Once the storm breaks, we need to move. Get you somewhere with a real doctor, proper supplies. Miller's Crossing might have what we need, or we push on to Fort Russell. They've got an army surgeon there. Fort Russell is 50 miles away. I know. In winter, with 5 children and a pregnant woman. I know. Caroline was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed. It was a small sound, broken and bitter, but real. My husband used to say I had a talent for finding trouble. Guess he was right. Ain't trouble that found you. It's evil, and evil ain't your fault. Tell that to my children. Tell that to Ruby. Sam didn't respond. There was nothing he could say that would make any of it better. The day passed slowly. Sam kept the fire burning, rationed out small portions of the preserved food, and tried to keep the children occupied. Grace and Ben had warmed up enough to become restless, their energy returning in fits and starts. Ben, the younger one, had taken a fascination with Sam's hands. You got big hands, the boy announced, standing directly in front of Sam with his head tilted back. Bigger than Papa's? Sam looked down at his work-roughened palms. I suppose I do. Papa had soft hands. Mama said it's 'cause he used them for writing, not working. Your papa was a schoolteacher. That's important work. Ben considered this. Do you write things? Not much. Mostly I fix things. Horseshoes, wagon wheels, broken stuff. Can you fix people too? Sam's throat tightened. He glanced at Caroline, who was watching from across the room. Her expression was unreadable. Sometimes, he said carefully. When I can. Can you fix Henry? Ben pointed at the silent boy who sat in the corner with Ruby, both of them drawing pictures in the dust on the floor. Maddie says he's broken inside. Says that's why he don't talk. Ben. Grace appeared at her brother's side and grabbed his arm. Don't be rude. I'm not being rude. I'm asking. Sam crouched down to Ben's level. Henry ain't broken. He's hurt. There's a difference. What's the difference? Broken means something can't be fixed. Hurt means it just needs time and care to heal. Ben frowned, processing this. So Henry's gonna talk again. I don't know, but I hope so. Me too. Ben nodded solemnly. He seems nice, even if he don't say nothing. The boy wandered off to join Henry and Ruby in the corner. Grace lingered, her eyes fixed on Sam with an intensity that reminded him of Martha. Is my mama going to be okay? She asked quietly. Really okay? Sam wished he could lie. Wished he could tell her that everything would be fine, that there was nothing to worry about. But this girl had watched her father die. She'd earned the truth. I don't know, he said. But I'm going to do everything I can to make sure she is. You have my word on that. Grace studied him for a long moment. Mama said you're a good man. She said she can tell. Your mama's delirious with fever. Might not be the best judge right now. A tiny smile flickered across Grace's face. She said you'd say something like that too. The girl walked away, leaving Sam alone with his thoughts. By nightfall, the blizzard had intensified again. Wind howled against the cabin walls, finding every crack and gap, sending fingers of cold creeping into the room. Sam fed the fire until it roared, but the temperature kept dropping. "We need to sleep close together," he announced. "Body heat. It's the only way we'll all make it through the night." They arranged themselves in a circle around the fire. Caroline in the center, protected on all sides. Grace and Ben pressed against her back. Ruby and Henry at her feet. Martha on one side, her body angled to shield the younger children. Sam took the position nearest the door. If anything came through it, human or animal, he'd be the first line of defense. "Mr. Sam." Ruby's small voice cut through the darkness. It was the first time she'd spoken directly to him. "Yeah. Are the bad men going to find us?" Sam felt every set of eyes in the cabin turn toward him. Even Henry seemed to be listening, his gaze focused for the first time. "No," Sam said firmly. "They ain't." "How do you know?" "Because I won't let them." Ruby was quiet for a moment. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, "My mama said the same thing before they came." Sam's chest ached. He didn't have an answer for that, didn't have a way to promise something he couldn't guarantee. But Martha spoke up, her voice steady in the darkness. "Your mama kept you safe, didn't she? She told you to hide and you did, and the bad men didn't find you." Ruby nodded slowly. "That's because she was smart and brave, and she loved you more than anything in the world." Martha paused. "Mr. Sam ain't your mama, but he's smart too, and brave, and I think he'd fight real hard to keep us safe. Wouldn't you, Mr. Sam?" "Yeah." Sam's voice was rougher than he intended. "I would." "See?" Martha settled back against the floor. "So close your eyes and get some sleep. We're gonna need our strength tomorrow." Ruby didn't respond, but she curled closer to Henry, and within minutes her breathing had evened out into sleep. Sam lay awake long after the others had drifted off. He stared at the ceiling, listening to the wind, feeling the weight of responsibility settling onto his shoulders like a physical burden. 6 people. 6 lives depending on him. The last time he'd felt this weight, he'd failed. He'd watched Emma's light fade from her eyes, watched his wife follow her into death a week later, watched everything he'd built crumble to ashes around him. He'd sworn he'd never let himself care that much again, never let himself have something to lose. But here he was, in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, with a pregnant woman and 5 orphaned children, caring more than he'd cared about anything in 3 years. "You're thinking too loud." Sam turned his head. Caroline was awake, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "Sorry, didn't mean to disturb you." "You didn't." She shifted carefully, trying not to wake Grace and Ben. "I can't sleep either. Too much pain. Too many thoughts." "Want me to check your bandages?" "No, just talk to me. About anything. I need to hear a voice that isn't my own." Sam was quiet for a moment, searching for words. "I had a daughter," he finally said. "Emma. She would have been 8 this year." Caroline's breath caught. "Would have been scarlet fever, 3 years ago. Took her and my wife both. I was a doctor. Best in the county, people said. Couldn't save my own family." "Sam, I'm so sorry. After they died, I couldn't be a doctor anymore. Every patient I looked at, I saw Emma. Every child I treated, I thought about how I'd failed her. So I stopped. Gave it all up. Started wandering." "That's why you tried to ride past, when you heard Martha crying." "Yeah. I told myself I didn't want the burden. Told myself I was done caring. But you stopped anyway." "I stopped anyway." Sam exhaled slowly. "And now here I am, in a cabin full of people who need me. And I'm terrified, Caroline. Terrified I'm gonna fail again. Terrified I'm gonna watch more people I care about die." Caroline reached out and found his hand in the darkness. Her fingers were warm now, her grip steady. "You know what I think," she said quietly. "What?" "I think you stopped running the moment you decided to turn your horse around. I think you've been looking for a reason to come back to yourself, and maybe you found it." Sam stared at their joined hands. He could feel her pulse against his palm. Alive. Still alive. "What if I fail?" he whispered. "Then you fail trying, and that's more than most people ever do." Caroline squeezed his fingers. "But I don't think you will. Call it a feeling. Call it desperation. But I believe in you, Sam Brennan, even if you don't believe in yourself." They lay there in the darkness, hands intertwined, listening to the storm rage outside. And for the first time in 3 years, Sam felt something other than grief. He felt hope. The morning came gray and cold. The blizzard had finally eased, leaving behind a world buried in white. Sam pushed open the cabin door and stepped outside his boots, sinking into snow that reached his knees. The silence was absolute. Not a breath of wind. Not a bird call. Nothing. He trudged to the lean-to and checked on the horses. All 4 were alive, though hungry and restless. He fed them the last of the oats from Caroline's wagon and promised them better days ahead. When he returned to the cabin, Martha was waiting at the door. "Storm's breaking," she said. "We should go." "Not yet. Caroline needs another day at least. And we need food." Martha nodded slowly. "You're going to hunt?" "Yeah. Think you can hold down the fort while I'm gone?" Martha's expression was almost offended. "I kept Henry alive for 2 weeks before you found us. I can handle a few hours." Sam almost smiled. Almost. "Fair enough. Keep everyone inside. Keep the fire burning. Don't open that door for anyone except me." "And if you don't come back—" Sam paused. He hadn't thought about that, hadn't wanted to. "If I'm not back by nightfall, take the horses and head east. Miller's Crossing is 15 miles. You'll make it." Martha met his eyes. For a moment she looked exactly like what she was, a 10-year-old girl who had lost everything. Then the mask came back, and she was a survivor again. "You'll come back," she said. "You have to." "Why's that?" "Because you promised Ruby you wouldn't let the bad men get us. And I'm starting to think you're the kind of man who keeps his promises." Sam picked up his rifle and headed into the frozen wilderness. He tracked a deer for 2 hours before finally bringing it down. A clean shot through the heart. Instant death. He field-dressed it quickly, his hands remembering the motions even though his mind recoiled from the blood. He was dragging the carcass back toward the cabin when he saw the smoke. Not from the cabin's chimney. From somewhere else. East maybe half a mile. Someone else was out here. Sam left the deer and crept toward the smoke rifle raised. Every step was careful, deliberate. The snow muffled his footfalls, but one wrong move would give him away. He reached the crest of a ridge and looked down. A camp. 3 horses. 3 men huddled around a fire, and tied to a tree shivering and crying was a woman. She was young, maybe 18 or 19. Her dress was torn, her face was bruised, and even from this distance Sam could see the terror in her eyes. One of the men stood and walked toward her. He said something Sam couldn't hear. The woman shook her head frantically. The man hit her. Sam's finger found the trigger. He could take them. 3 shots, 3 kills. He'd done worse in the war. But if he missed, if even one of them got away, they'd know someone was out here. They'd come looking. And they'd find the cabin. Sam lowered the rifle. He had to be smart about this. Had to think. But then the man hit the woman again, and she screamed, and something inside Sam snapped. He stood up and walked down the ridge. The men saw him coming. They scrambled for their weapons, but Sam was faster. His first shot caught the nearest man in the shoulder, spinning him around. His second took out the leg of the one reaching for a rifle. The third man, the one who'd been hitting the woman, raised his hands. "Easy now," he said. "Easy. We don't want no trouble." Sam kept walking until he was standing directly in front of the man. He could see the scar now, running down his left cheek. The leader. The one who'd killed Daniel Whitmore. Killed Maria Santiago. Left Caroline and her children to die. "You're Victor Hale," Sam said. The man's eyes widened. "How do you know my name?" I know a lot of things. I know what you did to the Whitmore family. The Santiago family. I know you've been hunting them." Hale's expression shifted. Surprise became calculation. "You're the one traveling with them. The one-armed man mentioned you." Sam's blood ran cold. "What one-armed man?" "Scout we sent ahead. Found tracks leading to an old mining cabin 3 miles north." Hale smiled, showing teeth that were yellowed and broken. "Sent him back to report to the others. Should be arriving there right about now." Sam moved before he could think. His rifle butt connected with Hale's skull, and the man crumpled like a puppet with cut strings. But it was already too late. The cabin, Caroline, the children. Sam ran. Sam's lungs burned as he tore through the snow. Branches whipped his face. His boots slipped on hidden ice. None of it mattered. Nothing mattered except getting back to that cabin before it was too late. 3 miles. He'd covered 3 miles in the hunt. Now he had to cover them again faster than he'd ever moved in his life. The rifle banged against his back with every stride. His heart hammered so hard he could feel it in his throat. Every second felt like an eternity. Every step felt like it wasn't enough. Caroline, Martha, the children. He should never have left them. Should never have gone hunting alone. Should never have assumed they'd be safe for a few hours. Stupid. Careless. The same mistakes that had cost him Emma. Sam pushed harder, his muscles screaming in protest. He crested the final ridge and saw the cabin below. Smoke still rose from the chimney. The door was closed. No signs of violence. Maybe he'd made it in time. Then he saw the tracks. Fresh boot prints in the snow, leading from the tree line to the cabin's east wall. At least 2 men, maybe 3. They'd circled around, approaching from the blind side, where there were no windows. Sam slowed his approach, forcing himself to think, despite the panic clawing at his chest. If he burst through the front door, he'd be a target. If they had the children as hostages, any sudden move could get someone killed. He needed to be smart, needed to be patient. But patience had never been his strength. Sam crept along the cabin's north wall, his back pressed against the rough logs. He could hear voices inside now. A man's voice, low and threatening. Caroline's voice, steady but strained. "I told you we don't have any money. They took everything months ago." "Don't lie to me, woman. Victor said you was carrying valuables, gold coins, jewelry. Victor's a murderer and a liar. Whatever he told you is wrong." A sharp crack. Someone being hit. Sam's vision went red. He rounded the corner and found a window shuttered but warped with age. Through the gap between the boards he could see inside. 2 men. One stood near the door, rifle in hand, keeping watch. The other had Caroline by the hair, her face twisted in pain. The children huddled in the corner, Martha standing in front of them, with her arms spread wide like a shield. Henry was crying, silent tears streaming down his face. Ruby had her eyes squeezed shut, her lips moving in what might have been a prayer. Grace held Ben against her chest, one hand clamped over his mouth to keep him quiet. And Caroline, 7 months pregnant and barely recovered from fever, refused to beg, refused to break. "Last chance," the man said. He yanked her hair harder. "Tell me where the valuables are, or I start with the little ones." Caroline spat in his face. The man raised his hand to strike her again. Sam fired through the window. The bullet caught the man in the shoulder, spinning him away from Caroline. He screamed and stumbled, crashing into the table. The second man wheeled toward the window, rifle rising. Sam was already moving. He hit the door at full speed, shoulder first. The wood splintered inward, and he rolled through the opening, coming up in a crouch with his rifle aimed. The second man fired. The shot went wide, punching through the wall inches from Sam's head. Sam didn't miss. The man dropped, clutching his leg, his rifle clattering to the floor. The first man was struggling to his feet, reaching for the pistol at his belt with his good arm. Sam crossed the room in 3 strides and brought the rifle butt down on his skull. The man collapsed and didn't move. Silence. Sam stood in the middle of the cabin chest, heaving, ears ringing from the gunshots. Smoke drifted through the shattered window. The acrid smell of gunpowder filled the air. Then Martha's voice cut through the haze. Sam, you're bleeding." Sam looked down. A dark stain was spreading across his left side just below the ribs. He hadn't even felt it. "It's nothing," he said. "Just a graze." "That ain't nothing." Caroline was on her feet, moving toward him despite her own injuries. "Sit down. Now." "Caroline, I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're shot." She grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the fire. "Martha, get the medical kit. Grace, I need clean cloth. Move." The children scattered to obey. Sam tried to protest, but Caroline pushed him down onto the floor with surprising strength. "You don't get to save us and then bleed to death," she said. "That ain't how this works." Sam wanted to argue, wanted to point out that 2 unconscious outlaws needed to be secured, that more men might be coming, that they didn't have time for this. But Caroline's hands were already on his shirt, pulling it up to expose the wound. Her fingers were gentle but firm, probing the edges of the injury with a doctor's precision. "It's not deep," she said. "Bullet went through the flesh, missed anything vital. You're lucky." "Don't feel lucky." "You're alive. So are we. That's luck enough." Martha appeared with the medical kit. She opened it and laid out the instruments with the same efficiency Sam had seen in trained nurses. "I can stitch it," she said quietly. "I watched my mama do it once when Papa cut himself on the plow." Sam shook his head. "I'll do it myself. Done it before." "You can't stitch your own side." "Watch me." "Sam." Caroline's voice was soft but unyielding. "Let us help you. Please." He looked at her. At the bruise forming on her cheek where the man had hit her. At the fear she was trying so hard to hide. At the steel beneath the fear. "All right," he said. "But we need to be fast. There are more of them out there." Martha threaded the needle while Caroline cleaned the wound. Sam gritted his teeth against the pain, focusing on the children to keep himself grounded. Ben had finally stopped crying. He sat in Grace's lap, thumb in his mouth, eyes huge and unblinking. Ruby had crawled over to Henry and was holding his hand again. Both children stared at Sam like he was something they couldn't quite understand. And Henry? Henry was looking directly at him. Really looking. For the first time since they'd met. The boy's lips moved. No sound came out, but Sam could read the word anyway. "Safe." Sam nodded. "Yeah, buddy. You're safe." Henry's shoulders relaxed. He leaned into Ruby and his eyes drifted closed. Martha pushed the needle through Sam's skin. He hissed, but held still. "Sorry," she muttered. "Don't be. You're doing fine." "My hands are shaking." "So were mine first time I stitched someone up. You get used to it." Martha worked in silence for a moment, then without looking up. "Is it true what you told Mrs. Caroline? About being a doctor?" "Yeah, it's true." "Why'd you stop?" Sam watched her small fingers pull the thread through his flesh. In and out precise, despite the trembling. "Because I couldn't save the people who mattered most. And after that, saving anyone else felt wrong. Like I didn't deserve to." Martha tied off the final stitch and cut the thread. "That's stupid." Sam blinked. "Excuse me." "I said that's stupid." Martha finally looked at him, her brown eyes fierce. "You saved Henry and me. You saved Mrs. Caroline and the others. You just saved all of us again." She jabbed a finger at his chest. "You don't get to decide you don't deserve to help people. Not when people need helping." Sam stared at this 10-year-old girl who had survived horrors that would break most adults, who had kept her brother alive through sheer stubborn will, who was now lecturing him on his own worth. "When did you get so wise?" he asked. "When I had to be." Caroline bandaged the wound while Sam processed Martha's words. They shouldn't have meant anything. She was just a child. What did she know about guilt, about failure, about the weight of lives lost? But somehow, coming from her, The words cut deeper than any sermon or philosophy ever had. "The men," Sam said, pushing himself to his feet, despite Caroline's protests. "We need to secure them before they wake up." "Already done." Martha pointed to the corner where both outlaws lay tied with rope, their weapons piled by the door. "Grace helped. She's stronger than she looks." Grace blushed and looked away. Sam checked the knots. Tight. Professional. These children had learned to survive in ways no child should have to. "There are more," he said. "The leader, Victor Hale. I left him unconscious about half a mile east, but he mentioned others. A larger group." Caroline's face paled. "How many?" "I don't know. Could be 3, could be 30. "Then we need to move. Now." "You can't travel. The baby will die if we stay here and get slaughtered." Caroline grabbed his arm. "I'd rather risk the road than wait for more killers to find us." Sam looked at the children, at their exhausted, frightened faces, at Henry finally sleeping peacefully, at Ruby still clutching his hand. Running meant risking Caroline's pregnancy. Staying meant risking all their lives. There was no good choice. There never was. "All right," he said. "We move at first light, but I need to go back first." "Back where?" "To Victor Hale. He knows things, where his men are camped, how many there are, what routes they're watching. If I can get that information. If you go back there alone, you might not come back at all." "I know." Caroline's grip tightened. "Then don't go." "I have to. If we run blind, we could walk right into an ambush. This is the only way." "There has to be another way." "There isn't." They stood face to face, neither willing to back down. The fire crackled between them. Outside, the wind had picked up again, howling through the broken window. "Then I'm coming with you," Martha said. Both adults turned to stare at her. "No," Sam said immediately. "You need someone to watch your back. I can shoot. You saw me with the rifle. You're 10 years old. And I've killed more rabbits than you've probably seen in your life. I know how to handle a gun, Mr. Sam. And I know how to be quiet. You need me." "Martha, I can't put you in danger." "I'm already in danger. We all are." She crossed her arms. "You said we're a family now, didn't you? Families protect each other. That means I get to protect you too." Sam opened his mouth to argue, but Caroline spoke first. "She's right." "Caroline, I don't like it either, but she's right. You can't do this alone, and I can't go with you. Martha's the only option." Sam looked at Martha, at her determined expression, at the way she stood, shoulders back, chin up, daring him to refuse. She reminded him so much of Emma in that moment that his chest ached. "Fine," he said quietly, "but you stay behind me at all times. You don't shoot unless I tell you to. And if things go wrong, you run. You run back here and you don't look back. Understood?" Martha nodded. "Understood." Sam retrieved his rifle and checked the ammunition. 6 rounds, plus the Colt at his hip with 5 more. Not much against an unknown number of enemies, but it would have to be enough. "We'll be back before dawn," he told Caroline. "Keep the fire low. Don't open the door for anyone." "Sam." Caroline caught his hand as he turned to leave. "Come back to us, please." He looked at her, at the children gathered behind her, at this makeshift family that had somehow become his reason to keep fighting. "I will," he said. And for the first time in 3 years, he meant it. The walk back to Hale's camp took longer in the dark. Sam moved carefully, testing each step, acutely aware of Martha's smaller form following close behind. She moved well, he had to admit. Light on her feet, careful not to snap branches or crunch through icy patches. The girl was a natural survivor. They found Hale, where Sam had left him still unconscious, slumped against a tree. The other 2 men were gone, likely fled when they heard the gunshots. Or maybe they'd gone to join the larger group Hale had mentioned. Either way, Sam didn't have time to track them. He knelt beside Hale and slapped the man's face, hard. Hale's eyes flew open. He tried to lunge forward, but Sam had already bound his hands and feet. "Morning," Sam said. "You and I are going to have a conversation." Hale's eyes darted around, taking in his situation. Bound. Alone. At the mercy of a man he'd wronged. He started to laugh. "You think this changes anything? My boys will find you. They'll find that cabin and everyone in it." "Your boys are scattered. 2 of them are tied up in the cabin right now. 2 more ran off when I started shooting. That leaves... How many?" Hale's laughter died. "Enough." "How many?" Silence. Sam drew his knife. The blade caught the moonlight, gleaming silver and cold. "I ain't a violent man by nature," Sam said conversationally. "Spent most of my life trying to heal people, not hurt them. But you threatened children tonight. You've been hunting a pregnant woman for months. You killed her husband, killed her friends." He leaned closer. "So I'm going to ask you one more time. How many men and where are they?" Hale's eyes fixed on the knife. For the first time, fear flickered across his face. 7, he said. 7 more. Camped at the old Johnson mine about 8 miles north. "Are they coming here?" "Not tonight. They were supposed to wait for my signal." "What signal?" Hale hesitated. Sam pressed the knife against his throat. "A fire." Hale gasped. 3 fires in a row on the ridge. That means we found the targets and they should move in. And if there's no signal, they wait, 3 days maximum, then they come looking. Sam sat back on his heels, processing the information. 3 days. They had 3 days before Hale's men would come searching. It wasn't much time, but it was something. "One more question," Sam said. Why hunt 1 widow and a handful of orphans across hundreds of miles? What's so valuable about them?" Hale's expression shifted. The fear was still there, but something else crept in. Greed. The Whitmore woman's husband, Daniel. He wasn't just a schoolteacher. He was carrying documents. Land deeds to property in Montana. Thousands of acres that his brother signed over to him, worth a fortune to the right buyer. Land deeds. Hidden somewhere in that wagon of hers. We've searched every inch but can't find them. She knows where they are. Has to. Sam thought of Caroline. Of her desperate flight across the territory with 2 young children and a baby on the way. She'd never mentioned anything about land deeds. Maybe she didn't know. Or maybe she did, and had been smart enough not to tell anyone. Either way, it explained why Hale had been so persistent. This wasn't just about robbery or violence. This was about wealth. About power. "Thank you," Sam said. "You've been very helpful." He stood and turned to Martha. "We're done here." "What about him?" Martha nodded at Hale. Sam considered the question. The easy thing would be to kill him. 1 bullet, 1 less threat. No one would blame him. But he could feel Emma watching him. Could hear her voice in his memory asking why he became a doctor if not to save lives. "Leave him," Sam said. "Bound like that, he won't last long in this cold." "But that's not my doing. That's nature." "That's murder," Hale snarled. "You're leaving me to die." "No. I'm giving you the same chance you gave Daniel Whitmore. The same chance you gave Maria Santiago." Sam met his eyes. "More than you deserve." He walked away without looking back. Martha fell into step beside him. After a few minutes she spoke. "You could have killed him." "Yeah." "Why didn't you?" Sam thought about the question, about all the reasons he should have pulled the trigger, about the danger Hale still represented even bound and freezing. Because killing him wouldn't bring back the people he murdered, wouldn't undo the pain he caused. Sam exhaled slowly, his breath fogging in the cold air. "And because if I start killing to make things easier, I ain't sure I'd ever stop." Martha was quiet for a long moment. "My papa used to say that revenge is a poison you drink hoping the other person will die." Smart man, your papa. He was. Martha's voice caught. I miss him every day. Sam put his hand on her shoulder. I know. I miss mine too. They walked in silence after that two survivors bound by loss, making their way through the frozen darkness toward whatever future awaited them. The cabin came into view just as the first light of dawn touched the eastern sky. Smoke still curled from the chimney. No new tracks in the snow. Safe. They were still safe. Sam pushed open the door and found Caroline sitting by the fire, a rifle across her lap. Her eyes were red-rimmed from lack of sleep, but they lit up when she saw him. You're back. Told you I would be. I know, but I didn't really believe it until now. Sam crossed the room and knelt beside her. Without thinking, he reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. We have 3 days, he said. 3 days before his men come looking. We need to move, but we need a plan first. Tell me everything. Sam told her. About Hale's confession, about the land deeds, about the 7 men waiting at the old mine. Caroline's face went through several emotions as she listened. Surprise, anger, and finally, a bitter sort of understanding. Daniel never told me, she said. About the land. His brother offered it to us, but Daniel said he wanted to earn our way, said he didn't want to rely on anyone else's charity. Maybe he was planning to tell you once you reached Montana. Maybe. Or maybe he knew someone might come after us and thought the less I knew, the safer I'd be. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. He was always trying to protect me, even when I didn't want protecting. Do you know where the deeds might be? Caroline was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her dress and pulled out a small pouch on a cord around her neck. Daniel gave me this the night before he died. Told me to keep it close and never show anyone. I thought it was sentimental. A love letter, maybe. I couldn't bring myself to open it after. She handed the pouch to Sam. He opened it carefully and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Even in the dim light, he could see the official seal, the careful handwriting, the signatures at the bottom. A deed of transfer for 6,000 acres in Montana Territory. This is worth a fortune, Sam said quietly. Then let them have it. Caroline's voice was fierce. Let them have every acre if it means they'll leave us alone. It won't work that way. Hale's already killed too many people. He can't leave witnesses. Then what do we do? Sam looked at the deed in his hand, at the woman in front of him, at the children sleeping in the corner, finally at peace after days of terror. We don't run, he said slowly. We don't hide. We go to Miller's Crossing and find the law. Real law. Then we hunt them before they can hunt us. Caroline stared at him. You want to turn this into a fight? It's already a fight. Has been since they killed your husband. The only question is whether we fight on our terms or theirs. But the children. The children will never be safe until Hale and his men are stopped. You know that. Caroline closed her eyes. Her hand moved to her belly where her unborn child kicked against her palm. I'm scared, she whispered. So am I. What if we lose? Then we lose together, as a family. Caroline opened her eyes. They were bright with tears, but beneath the tears was something else. Determination. Resolve. All right, she said. Let's end this. They left the cabin at first light. Sam had loaded both wagons with everything they could carry. Caroline sat in the lead wagon with Grace Ben and baby Ruby. Martha drove the second wagon with Henry beside her, the 2 captured outlaws bound and gagged in the back. The snow had stopped falling, but the cold remained brutal. Every breath turned to fog. Every exposed inch of skin burned. Sam rode ahead on dust, his rifle across his lap, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. 3 days. Hale had said they had 3 days before his men would come looking. Sam intended to use every hour. Miller's Crossing was 15 miles east, a mining town, Caroline had said. Maybe 200 people, a general store, a saloon, a church, and hopefully a sheriff. The first mile passed in silence. The children were too exhausted and frightened to speak. The adults were too focused on survival. Then Ben's small voice cut through the quiet. "Mama, are we going to die?" Caroline pulled her son closer, wrapping her arm around his small shoulders. "No, sweetheart. We're going to be just fine." "But the bad men are going to jail. Mr. Sam is going to make sure of it." Ben craned his neck to look at Sam riding ahead of them. "Is Mr. Sam a lawman?" "No, he's something better. He's a good man." Sam heard the exchange but didn't turn around. His throat felt tight. His eyes stung, and he told himself it was just the cold. They'd covered maybe 4 miles when Grace spotted the smoke. "Mama, look!" A thin column of gray rose from beyond the next ridge. Not a campfire. Too much smoke for that. Something bigger. Sam reined dust to a halt and held up his hand, signaling the wagons to stop. "Stay here," he said. "I'm going to check it out." "Sam, be careful." He nodded at Caroline and urged Dust forward, keeping low in the saddle. The rifle was already in his hands, ready to fire. He crested the ridge and stopped. Below him lay the remains of a farmstead. The house was still burning flames, licking at the collapsed roof. The barn was already gone, nothing but blackened timbers and ash. 2 bodies lay in the yard, motionless. And standing in the middle of it all, warming his hands by the fire he'd started, was a man Sam recognized. The thin one with the scar. Pike. One of the men who'd escaped from Hale's camp. He wasn't alone. 2 other men stood with him, passing a bottle between them, laughing at something Sam couldn't hear. 3 against 1. Bad odds. But then Sam noticed the small figure huddled near the burning house. A child, maybe 8 or 9, with dark hair and torn clothes. A girl. Alive, but barely moving. The men hadn't seen her yet. Or maybe they had and were saving her for later. Either way, Sam couldn't leave her. He dismounted quietly and crept down the ridge, using the smoke as cover. His heart pounded in his chest. His wounded side ached with every movement. 30 yards. 20. 10. Pike turned. For a split second their eyes met. Recognition flashed across Pike's scarred face. Sam fired. The bullet caught Pike in the chest. The man staggered backward, surprise frozen on his features, and collapsed into the snow. The other 2 scrambled for their weapons. Sam was faster. His second shot took one man in the shoulder, spinning him around. The third man dove behind a water trough, returning fire. A bullet whizzed past Sam's ear. Another struck the ground at his feet. He rolled behind a fallen log, reloading with hands that trembled from cold and adrenaline. "Give it up," the hidden man shouted. "You're outnumbered. Funny, I count 2 of you still breathing, and one of those is bleeding pretty bad." The wounded man groaned, clutching his shoulder. He wasn't going to be any help in a fight. "Who are you?" the hidden man demanded. "Name's Sam Brennan. I'm the one who left your boss tied to a tree last night." Silence. Then a harsh laugh. "You're the fool who's been protecting that widow woman. Hale told us about you." "Then you know what happened to the men he sent to take her." More silence. Sam could almost hear the man calculating his odds. "Tell you what," Sam called out. "Throw down your weapon, come out with your hands up, and I'll let you live. You can tell the judge everything you know about Hale's operation. Maybe they'll go easy on you. And if I don't, then I wait. I've got time. You don't. Your friend there is losing blood fast, and I'm betting you don't know the first thing about doctoring." A long pause. Then the sound of metal hitting snow. All right, I'm coming out." The man emerged with his hands raised. He was younger than Sam expected, maybe 22, 23. Just a kid, really. A kid who'd made terrible choices. "On your knees," Sam ordered. "Hands behind your head." The young man obeyed. His face was pale, his eyes darting between Sam and his wounded companion. "Please," he said, "don't kill me. I didn't want any of this. Hale forced us. Save it for the judge. Sam bound both men with rope from his saddlebag. The wounded one had passed out from blood loss, but his pulse was steady enough. He'd live to stand trial. Then Sam turned to the burning farmhouse. The girl was still there, curled into a ball, staring at nothing. As Sam approached, she flinched but didn't run. "Easy," he said softly. "I ain't gonna hurt you. Can you tell me your name?" The girl's lips moved, but no sound came out. Sam knelt down to her level, keeping his movements slow and unthreatening. "My name is Sam. I'm here to help. Do you understand?" A tiny nod. "Good. That's good." Sam held out his hand. "Can you walk?" "We need to get you somewhere safe." The girl stared at his hand for a long moment. Then slowly she reached out and took it. Her fingers were ice cold. Sam lifted her into his arms and carried her back to dust. She weighed almost nothing, skin and bones wrapped in torn fabric. As he mounted the horse, the girl spoke for the first time. Her voice was barely a whisper. "They killed my mama, and my papa, and my brother." Sam's chest tightened. "I know. I'm sorry." "Are you going to kill them too?" "No. I'm going to take them to people who will make sure they never hurt anyone again." The girl considered this. "Good," she said finally. "Killing is wrong. Mama said so." "Your mama was right." They rode back to the wagons. When Caroline saw the girl in Sam's arms, her face crumpled. "Oh, sweet child. Oh, you poor thing." She climbed down from the wagon and reached for the girl. The child went to her without hesitation, wrapping thin arms around Caroline's neck and burying her face in her shoulder. "Her family?" Caroline asked quietly. Sam shook his head. Caroline closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were bright with tears and fury. "How many?" she asked. "How many more children are these monsters going to destroy?" "No more. Not if I have anything to say about it." They loaded the two new prisoners into the second wagon. The young one, whose name turned out to be Eli, started talking almost immediately, confessing everything. Names, locations, plans. All of it pouring out in a terrified stream. "Hale's been running this operation for 2 years, Eli said. "Targets wagon trains, isolated farms. Anyone who looks like easy pickings. Takes their valuables, sells the women and children to mining operations down south. Anyone who fights back, he kills." "How many men does he have?" "Was 12 at the start of winter, down to 7 now after your little rampage." Eli's voice held a note of grudging respect. "Never seen anyone take out so many of Hale's boys single-handed." "Where's the main camp?" "Old Johnson Mine. 8 miles north of where you found us. But they won't stay there long. Hale's got a backup location in case things go wrong. An abandoned church about 3 miles outside Miller's Crossing." Sam filed this information away. If Hale's men realized their scouts weren't coming back, they might move to the backup location. Cut off the road to town. They needed to move faster. "We're making for Miller's Crossing," Sam announced. "Push the horses as hard as they can handle. We need to reach town before nightfall." "The animals are exhausted," Martha pointed out. "They won't make it." "They'll make it. They have to." The next several hours blurred together. The wagons creaked and groaned over frozen ground. The horses stumbled, but kept going, driven by desperation that seemed to pass from the humans to the animals. The children grew quieter as the day wore on. Even Ben stopped asking questions, sensing that something important was happening. Something that required all the adults' attention. The new girl, whose name they learned was Josephine, refused to let go of Caroline. She clung to the pregnant woman like a drowning person clutching driftwood. Caroline held her close and sang softly. Old hymns, lullabies, songs from a world that felt very far away. Sam rode ahead, pushing dust to her limits. His side throbbed where the bullet had grazed him. His hands were numb from cold. Every muscle in his body screamed for rest. But he couldn't stop. Not now. Not when they were so close. Miller's Crossing came into view just as the sun touched the western mountains. It was bigger than Sam had expected. 50, maybe 60 buildings spread along a main street. Wooden boardwalks lined both sides. A church steeple rose at one end, a water tower at the other. And in the center of town, a building with iron bars on the windows and a sign that read, Sheriff's Office. Sam felt something loosen in his chest. Hope. Fragile and uncertain, but real. They rode into town like refugees from a war. The wagons rattled down the main street, drawing stares from the townspeople. A man stepped out of the general store and froze his mouth hanging open. A woman gathered her children close and hurried inside. Sam dismounted in front of the sheriff's office and pushed through the door. A man sat behind a scarred wooden desk, his feet propped up a newspaper in his hands. He looked up as Sam entered, his expression shifting from annoyance to curiosity. "Help you, stranger?" "I need the sheriff." "You're looking at him." The man set down the newspaper and stood. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a thick mustache and sharp eyes. A star was pinned to his vest. "Sheriff Thomas Burke, and you are—" "Sam Brennan. I've got 4 prisoners outside who belong to a gang that's been terrorizing this territory. The leader is a man named Victor Hale. I've got witnesses, confessions, and evidence of murder, robbery, and kidnapping." Burke's eyebrows rose. "Victor Hale? You sure about that name?" "Positive. One of his men gave up everything. Locations, numbers, plans." The sheriff was already moving, grabbing his coat and hat from a hook by the door. "Show me." They walked outside together. Burke took one look at the prisoners at Caroline and the children at the hollow-eyed survivors, packed into 2 battered wagons, and his jaw tightened. "God Almighty, what happened to these people?" "Hale happened. His men have been hunting Mrs. Whitmore for 3 months. Killed her husband. Killed other families. Been selling children to mining operations." Burke's face went pale. "Selling children. The prisoner named Eli will confirm everything." The sheriff turned to one of the townspeople who had gathered to watch. "Jacob, get Doc Peterson. Tell him we've got wounded and sick. Multiple children." He turned to another. "Mary, open up the church. We need somewhere warm to put these people." The town mobilized with surprising speed. Within an hour, Caroline and the children were settled in the church, wrapped in blankets with hot food and a roaring fire. Doc Peterson, a gray-haired man with gentle hands, examined each of them in turn. "The pregnant woman needs rest," he told Sam. "Complete bed rest. She's been through too much. Any more stress and she could lose the baby." "Can she be moved?" "Not for at least a week. Probably 2. Sam nodded. He'd expected as much. Sheriff Burke had taken the prisoners to the jail and conducted initial interviews. Now he found Sam in the church, standing watch over the sleeping children. "The young one, Eli, he's singing like a canary," Burke said. "Everything you said checks out. Hale's got 7 men left at the Johnson mine waiting for a signal that ain't coming. They'll move soon, when they realize their scouts are gone. I've already sent for the territorial marshal. He's based at Fort Russell, maybe 2 days' ride, but I can't wait that long." Burke's expression was grim. "I've got 4 deputies, good men, but not enough to assault a fortified position." "What about the townspeople?" "Miners mostly, shopkeepers, a few ranchers. They'll fight if they have to, but they're not soldiers." Sam looked at the children. At Martha, who'd fallen asleep sitting up, her hand still resting on the rifle she'd insisted on keeping. At Henry and Ruby, curled together like 2 halves of the same whole. At Grace and Ben, wrapped around their mother. At Josephine, the newest orphan who'd cried herself to sleep in Caroline's arms. "I'll go," Sam said. Burke stared at him. "Alone against 7 armed men. I know the terrain. I know their positions. And I've got something they don't expect." "What's that?" Sam's jaw tightened. "Nothing left to lose." "That's suicide." "Maybe, but if I don't go, they'll scatter, disappear into the territory. Start over somewhere else, hurting more people, destroying more families. Sam met the sheriff's eyes. I've spent 3 years running from death. I think it's time I started running towards something instead. Burke was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metal object. A deputy's badge. If you're going to do this, Burke said, do it with the authority of the law behind you. Raise your right hand. Sam hesitated. Then he raised his hand. Do you swear to uphold the laws of this territory, to protect the innocent, and to bring justice to the guilty? I do. Burke pinned the badge to Sam's chest. Then go get those bastards, Deputy Brennan. Sam nodded once. He turned to leave, then stopped. Caroline was awake. She'd been watching the whole exchange. You're leaving, she said. It wasn't a question. I have to. I know. She struggled to sit up. Come here. Sam crossed the room and knelt beside her. Caroline reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the lines of exhaustion and pain. You come back to me, she whispered. You hear me, Sam Brennan? You come back to me and these children. I will. Promise me. Sam thought of all the promises he'd made and broken. To his wife, to Emma, to himself. But looking at Caroline, at the fire in her eyes and the steel in her voice, he found that he believed his own words. I promise. She pulled him close and kissed him. It was brief, desperate, full of everything neither of them had time to say. When they broke apart, Martha was standing beside them. I'm coming with you, she said. No. Mr. Sam? No, Martha. Not this time. Sam gripped her shoulders. I need you here. I need you to protect them. Can you do that? Martha's lip trembled. For just a moment, she looked exactly like what she was. A 10-year-old girl who had already lost too much. What if you don't come back? Then you keep going. You take care of Mrs. Caroline and the others. You build a life. You don't let grief win. He pulled her into a fierce embrace. But I'm planning on coming back. So have some faith. Martha hugged him back hard. I hate this. I know. Me too. Sam released her and stood. He looked at each of the children in turn. At Ruby, still asleep. At Henry, who watched him with those silent, knowing eyes. At Grace and Ben huddled together. At Josephine, the newest member of their broken little family. I'll see you soon, he said. Then he walked out into the night. The ride to the Johnson mine took 4 hours. Sam pushed dust hard, following the directions Eli had provided, navigating by starlight and instinct. The mine was exactly where Eli had said. An old silver operation abandoned when the vein ran dry. The main shaft entrance gaped like a dark mouth in the hillside. Around it, a cluster of wooden buildings. Bunkhouse, cook shack, tool shed, and guards. 2 men patrolling the perimeter, rifles in hand. Sam dismounted a quarter-mile out and approached on foot. The snow muffled his footsteps. The darkness hid his movements. He took out the first guard with a chokehold, lowering the unconscious body silently to the ground. The second guard went down the same way. That left 5. Sam crept toward the bunkhouse. Light flickered through gaps in the wooden walls. Voices drifted out. Laughter. Clinking bottles. They were celebrating. Probably thought they had another day or two before anyone came looking. They were wrong. Sam positioned himself outside the door. He took a deep breath. Let it out slowly. Then he kicked the door in. The next few seconds were chaos. Sam fired twice before anyone could react, dropping 2 men where they stood. A third lunged for his weapon and took a bullet in the leg. The fourth actually managed to get a shot off, but it went wide, punching through the wall behind Sam's head. Sam's return shot didn't miss. That left 1 man standing. The biggest of the group, a mountain of muscle and rage, who charged at Sam with nothing but his fists. Sam sidestepped and brought the rifle butt down on the back of the man's skull. The giant crumpled like a felled tree. Silence. Sam stood in the middle of the bunkhouse, breathing hard, his hands shaking with adrenaline. 5 men down, 2 dead, 3 wounded. But something was wrong. The count didn't add up. Eli had said 7 men at the mine. Sam had taken out 2 guards and 5 in the bunkhouse. 7. But Eli had also mentioned Victor Hale. And Sam had left Hale tied to a tree 3 days ago. Unless someone had found him. Cut him loose. Unless Hale was all ready. Sam heard the click of a hammer being cocked behind him. Turn around slowly. Sam turned. Victor Hale stood in the doorway, a pistol aimed at Sam's chest. His face was gray with frostbite. His hands trembled with cold and fury, but his eyes burned with hatred. "You should have killed me when you had the chance," Hale said. "Probably. Now you're going to die, and then I'm going to find that pregnant woman and those children. I'm going to make them suffer for every man you've killed tonight." "No," Sam said quietly. "You're not. You're in no position to—" The shot came from outside, through the window, a clean hit that knocked the pistol from Hale's hand. Hale screamed and clutched his shattered fingers. Sam moved before the man could recover, driving his fist into Hale's jaw. Once, twice, 3 times. Hale went down and stayed down. Sam looked toward the window. Sheriff Burke stepped through the broken glass, a smoking rifle in his hands. Behind him, 4 deputies spread out securing the remaining prisoners. "Thought you might need some backup," Burke said. Sam stared at him. "You followed me. Couldn't let my newest deputy get killed on his first night, could I?" Burke smiled grimly. "Besides, this territory owes these children justice. Figured I ought to help deliver it." Sam looked at Victor Hale unconscious on the floor, at the gang of murderers and slavers finally defeated, at the badge still pinned to his chest. "It's over," he said. The words felt strange in his mouth. "It's really over." "Not quite." Burke holstered his rifle. "We've still got to get these scum back to town, stand trial, face the consequences. And then—" Burke looked at him. "And then, Deputy Brennan, you've got a family waiting for you." Sam thought of Caroline, of Martha and the children, of the promise he'd made. "Yeah," he said. "I do." The ride back to Miller's Crossing took twice as long as the journey out. The prisoners slowed them down, and the wounded men required frequent stops for water and rest. Sam didn't mind. Every mile that passed felt like another weight lifting from his shoulders. Victor Hale rode in chains at the center of the column, his shattered hand wrapped in bloody bandages, his eyes fixed on Sam with undying hatred. He hadn't spoken since the mine, hadn't needed to. His silence said everything. But Sam didn't care about Hale's hatred anymore. The man was finished. His gang was broken. The children were safe. That was all that mattered. They reached town just after noon on the second day. Word had spread ahead of them, and the main street was lined with townspeople who had come to witness the return. Some cheered. Others stood in grim silence watching as the prisoners were paraded toward the jail. Sam ignored all of it. His eyes searched the crowd for only one thing. He found her on the church steps. Caroline stood with the children gathered around her, her hand resting on her swollen belly. Martha was at her side, standing tall and proud. Henry and Ruby held hands. Grace had Ben on her hip. Josephine clung to Caroline's skirt, peeking out at the commotion with wide eyes. When Caroline saw Sam, her face crumpled. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she was smiling, laughing and crying at the same time. Sam dismounted and walked toward her. The crowd parted to let him through. He heard whispers, fragments of conversation, but none of it registered. He stopped at the bottom of the steps, suddenly uncertain. After everything they'd been through, he didn't know how to close the distance. Caroline made the choice for him. She came down the steps and threw her arms around him, holding tight despite her pregnant belly between them. Sam buried his face in her hair and breathed her in. She smelled like smoke and soap and something uniquely her. "You came back," she whispered. "I promised." "I know. But I was so scared. So scared I'd lost you." "You haven't lost me." Sam pulled back enough to look at her. "You haven't lost me, Caroline. Not now, not ever." Martha appeared at their side. Her eyes were red, but her chin was steady. "Took you long enough," she said. Sam laughed. It was a strange sound, rusty from disuse but real. "Had some business to take care of." "Did you get all of them?" "Every last one." Martha nodded slowly. Then, without warning, she launched herself at Sam and hugged him fiercely. "I was worried," she admitted into his chest. "I hate being worried." "I know. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Just don't do it again." The other children crowded around. Grace and Ben, shy but hopeful. Ruby, who had learned a few more English words and used them now. "Safe," she said, pointing at Sam. "Safe man." Henry stepped forward last, the silent boy who hadn't spoken since watching his parents die. He looked up at Sam with those deep, knowing eyes, and then he spoke. "Home." One word, barely a whisper. But it hit Sam like a thunderbolt. He knelt down to Henry's level, his throat too tight to speak. He nodded instead, hoping the boy could understand. Henry nodded back. Then he stepped into Sam's arms and held on. The trial began 3 weeks later. Judge Ezekiel Foster arrived from Fort Russell, a distinguished man in his 60s, with steel gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see through every lie. He was a former slave who had escaped to freedom before the war and studied law in the decades since. His reputation for fairness was legendary throughout the territory. The courtroom was packed. Every seat filled every inch of standing room occupied. People had come from miles around to witness justice being served. Sam sat in the front row with Caroline at his side. The children were at the boarding house with Doc Peterson's wife, who had volunteered to watch them during the proceedings. Victor Hale was brought in chains. He looked diminished, somehow smaller than he had in the wilderness. The man who had terrorized families and murdered innocents now seemed pathetic, broken. The testimony lasted 2 days. Eli, the young outlaw, who had confessed everything, spoke first. He detailed the gang's operations, the families they had attacked, the children they had sold to mining operations. His voice shook, but he held nothing back. Caroline testified next. She told the court about Daniel's murder, about Maria Santiago's sacrifice, about the months of terror and flight. Her voice never wavered. Sam was called last. He described finding Martha and Henry, meeting Caroline, the attacks and escapes and battles. He told them about the girl at the burned farmstead, about the confession he had extracted from Hale about the raid on the mine. When he finished, Judge Foster was silent for a long moment. "Mr. Brennan," the judge said finally, "Sheriff Burke tells me you were a doctor before all this. Is that true?" "Yes, sir, in another life." "And you gave it up. Why?" Sam glanced at Caroline. She nodded, encouraging him. "I lost my family," Sam said quietly. "My wife and daughter. To illness I couldn't cure. After that, I didn't feel like I deserved to heal anyone." "And now?" Sam thought about the question. About Martha sewing his wound with steady hands. About Caroline holding his face and telling him to come back. About Henry speaking for the first time in months. "Now I know I was wrong," he said. "Running from pain doesn't make it go away. It just means you're alone when it catches up to you." Judge Foster nodded slowly. "The court thanks you for your testimony, Mr. Brennan, and for your service to this community." The verdict came quickly. Victor Hale and his surviving men were found guilty on all counts: murder, robbery, kidnapping, trafficking of children. Hale was sentenced to hang. The execution took place a week later. Sam didn't attend. Neither did Caroline or the children. They had seen enough death. They didn't need to witness more. Instead, they spent that morning together at the boarding house, planning for the future. "The land deeds," Caroline said, spreading the documents on the table. 6,000 acres in Montana. Daniel's brother signed them over to us before we left Kansas. It was supposed to be our new start. Sam studied the papers. "That's a lot of land." "Too much for one person to manage." But maybe not for a family. She looked at him. The question hung in the air between them. Caroline, Sam began. Wait. She held up her hand. Before you say anything, I need you to understand something. I loved Daniel. He was a good man, and I mourned him. I still mourn him. I know. But he's gone. And you're here. You saved my children. You saved me. And somewhere along the way, I started feeling things I didn't expect to feel. Caroline, I'm not asking you to replace him. I'm not asking you to be someone you're not. I'm just asking if maybe, possibly, you might want to build something with us. A home, a family, a future. Sam was quiet for a long moment. He thought of Emma, of the wife he had buried, of the grief that had consumed him for 3 years. But he also thought of Martha standing guard over the younger children with a rifle in her hands. Of Henry finally finding his voice. Of Ruby learning to smile again. Of Grace and Ben and Josephine healing in ways he hadn't thought possible. And he thought of Caroline. Her strength. Her fire. The way she looked at him like he was worth something. I ain't an easy man, Sam said slowly. I've got scars. Visible ones and otherwise. I don't sleep well. I get quiet when I should talk. I push people away when they get too close. I know. And I don't care. The children. They'd be mine too legally. If you want them. Even Martha and Henry. Even Ruby and Josephine. Caroline smiled. It was the most beautiful thing Sam had ever seen. Especially them. They need a father. You need children. Seems like a fair trade to me. Sam reached into his pocket and pulled out the deputy's badge Sheriff Burke had given him. He turned it over in his hands, watching the light play across the metal. Burke offered me a permanent position, he said. Deputy Sheriff of Miller's Crossing. Steady pay, respect, a chance to do some good. What did you tell him? Told him I'd think about it. Sam set the badge on the table. But I've been thinking about something else too. Doc Peterson is getting old. Says he needs help. Someone to take over when he retires. Caroline's breath caught. Sam, are you saying... I'm saying maybe it's time I stopped running from who I am. Maybe it's time I started being a doctor again. He looked at her. If you'll have me. If you'll help me. Caroline reached across the table and took his hand. Samuel Brennan, she said. I would be honored to help you become whoever you want to be. They were married 2 weeks later in the little church at the end of Miller's Crossing's main street. It wasn't a fancy ceremony. Caroline wore a borrowed dress. Sam wore his cleanest shirt. Sheriff Burke served as best man. Doc Peterson's wife stood as matron of honor. But the church was full. Townspeople who had witnessed their arrival. Miners who had heard the stories. Families from surrounding ranches who had lived in fear of Hale's gang and now felt safe again. And in the front row, 7 children sat in a line. Martha holding herself with the dignity of someone far older than 10. Henry beside her, his hand in Ruby's, a small smile on his face. Grace and Ben scrubbed clean and dressed in new clothes. Josephine still shy, but no longer flinching at every sound. And in Caroline's arms, a newborn baby girl. She had arrived 3 days before the wedding in the small hours of the morning. Doc Peterson had delivered her with Sam assisting his medical skills returning like muscle memory. Caroline had named her Hope. Dearly beloved, the preacher began. Sam barely heard the words. He was too busy looking at Caroline, at her eyes bright with unshed tears, at her smile full of a joy he had thought he would never feel again. When it came time for the vows, Sam's voice was steady. I, Samuel Edward Brennan, take you, Caroline Whitmore, to be my wife, in sickness and in health, in joy and in sorrow, for as long as we both shall live. Caroline's voice trembled but held. I, Caroline Marie Whitmore, take you, Samuel Edward Brennan, to be my husband. I promise to stand with you, to fight beside you, to build a life with you, until death do us part. The preacher smiled. By the power vested in me by this territory, and by Almighty God, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Mr. Brennan, you may kiss your bride." Sam kissed her. It was soft and sweet, and it felt like coming home. The church erupted in cheers, but it was Martha's voice that rang out above the rest. "Finally! Can we eat cake now?" Spring came slowly to Montana. The snow melted in patches, revealing brown grass and mud, and the first stubborn shoots of green. The mountains still wore their white caps, but the valleys had begun to warm. Life was returning to the land. The Brennan homestead sat at the base of a gentle slope, surrounded by 6,000 acres of possibility. The main house was modest but solid, built by Sam's own hands, with help from neighbors and the children. 2 stories, 4 bedrooms, a kitchen big enough for a family of 9. Caroline stood on the front porch, baby Hope in her arms, watching her children play in the yard. Martha was teaching Henry and Ruby how to rope a fence post. Her technique was improving, though she still muttered under her breath every time she missed. Henry had started speaking more often now, short sentences that grew longer each week. Ruby had become his translator, filling in gaps with a mixture of English and Spanish that somehow made perfect sense. Grace and Ben chased each other through the tall grass, their laughter carrying on the wind. Josephine followed at a more sedate pace, stopping every few steps to examine a flower or a bug, or some other wonder that caught her eye. And sitting on the porch steps, medical bag at his feet, was Sam. He had reopened his practice 3 months ago. Nothing formal. No office, no shingle. Just a man with skills and a willingness to help. Word had spread quickly, and now folks came from miles around when they needed a doctor. He still had nightmares sometimes. Still woke in the dark, reaching for Emma, finding only empty air. But the grief no longer consumed him. It had become something else. A scar, not a wound. A reminder of what he had lost and what he had found. "Penny for your thoughts," Caroline said, settling into the rocking chair beside him. "Just thinking about how much has changed." "Good changes." Sam watched Martha finally land a perfect throw, the rope settling cleanly over the post. She let out a whoop of triumph that startled a flock of birds from a nearby tree. "Yeah," he said. "Good changes." Caroline leaned against his shoulder. Hope made a soft sound in her sleep, tiny fists clenching and unclenching. "I got a letter from Judge Foster yesterday," Caroline said. "The adoption papers have been approved. All 7 children are legally ours now." Sam's throat tightened. He had known it was coming, had signed the documents weeks ago. But hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way nothing else had. "All 7, he repeated. "Martha Henry, Ruby Grace, Ben Josephine, and Hope. The Brennan children." The Brennan children. Sam rolled the words around in his mouth. "I like the sound of that." "So do I." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the children, listening to the wind rustle through the grass. Then Martha came bounding up the steps, her face flushed with excitement. "Pa, did you see I got it perfect?" Pa. She had started calling him that a month ago, the first time Sam had nearly cried. "I saw," he said. "That was some fine roping." "Henry wants to try next, but he's scared of the rope. Can you come show him?" "I think you're doing just fine without me." "But he trusts you more. He trusts you with everything." Sam looked at his wife. Caroline smiled and nodded toward the yard. "Go on. They need their father." Father. Another word that had once felt impossible. Sam stood and followed Martha down the steps. Henry was waiting by the fence, the rope coiled nervously in his hands. Ruby stood beside him, offering encouragement in her bilingual way. "All right, son," Sam said, crouching to Henry's level. "Let me show you how it's done." He took the boy's hands and guided them through the motion. Henry's first throw went wide. So did his second. But on the third try, the rope caught the post and held. Henry's face split into the biggest smile Sam had ever seen. "I did it," he said. "Pa, I did it. You sure did. I'm proud of you." The other children came running to celebrate. Grace gave Henry a hug. Ben demanded to try next. Ruby declared that she could do it better, which started a friendly argument that Sam had to mediate. Standing there surrounded by laughter and chaos and love, Sam felt something he had thought was lost forever. Peace. That evening after dinner, the family gathered around the fireplace. It had become a ritual. Every night after the dishes were cleared and the younger children were in their nightclothes, they came together to share stories. Sometimes Sam told tales of his doctoring days. Sometimes Caroline recounted adventures from her childhood in Kansas. Sometimes the children made up wild fantasies about cowboys and outlaws and hidden treasure. Tonight, it was Martha's turn. She stood before the fire, her face illuminated by the dancing flames, her voice carrying clear and strong. "Once upon a time," she began, "there was a girl who lost everything. Her mama, her papa, her home. She thought she was alone. She thought nobody would ever want her again." The younger children leaned forward, captivated. But then she found something she didn't expect. A man who was broken just like her. A woman who was brave just like her. And a whole bunch of other kids who were lost just like her. Martha's eyes found Sam's across the room. They weren't a family at first. They were strangers, scared and hurt, and not sure if they could trust each other. But they learned. They fought together. They cried together. They saved each other. Her voice grew stronger. And one day the girl realized something important. Family isn't about blood. It isn't about where you come from or who you're born to. Family is about choice. It's about looking at someone who has nothing and saying, "You have me." It's about building something that lasts. Martha smiled, and Sam saw the woman she would become. Strong, wise, unbreakable. The girl thought she was alone, Martha concluded. But she was wrong. She had a family the whole time. She just had to find them. Silence fell over the room. Then Ben piped up. "Is that story about you, Maddie?" Martha laughed. "What do you think, Squirt?" "I think it's about all of us." "Then I guess you're smarter than you look." Caroline gathered the children for bedtime. Kisses were distributed, blankets were tucked, prayers were said. One by one, the small voices faded into sleep. Sam and Caroline sat alone by the dying fire. "She's remarkable," Caroline said. "Martha. All of them, really. But especially her. She's had to be. She won't have to be anymore. None of them will. They have us now." Sam reached for Caroline's hand, her fingers intertwined with his warm and familiar. "I used to think I was being punished," he said quietly. "Losing Emma. Losing my wife. I thought God had taken everything from me because I didn't deserve it. And now I think maybe he was just clearing space, making room for something new." Sam looked at the staircase where his children slept, making room for them. Caroline leaned her head against his shoulder. "I love you, Sam Brennan." "I love you too, Caroline Brennan." They sat together as the fire burned low, as the stars wheeled overhead, as another night passed peacefully in a home that had been built from nothing. 23 years later, the Brennan homestead had become a town. Not a big town. Maybe 100 families, but it was enough. A general store, a schoolhouse, a church, a doctor's office that had been expanded twice to meet growing demand. Sam Brennan, now 67 years old, sat on his porch in the same rocking chair he had occupied for more than 2 decades. His hair was white, his hands spotted with age, but his eyes were still sharp, still watchful. Caroline sat beside him, her own hair streaked with silver, her smile unchanged despite the years. Around them, the evidence of a life well lived. Martha had become a doctor herself, trained by Sam, now running a practice of her own in Helena. She had married a good man and had 3 children who visited every summer. Henry had found his voice and his calling. He was a teacher now, working with children who, like him, had suffered trauma. He had developed ways of reaching them that the professionals couldn't understand but couldn't deny. Ruby had become a translator for the territorial government, bridging the gap between English and Spanish speakers throughout the region. She had never forgotten her mother's sacrifice. She honored it every day. Grace had taken over the ranch operations, proving herself a shrewd businesswoman with a gift for managing land and livestock. Her husband joked that he had married above his station. He wasn't wrong. Ben had followed Sam's early path, becoming a lawman. He was sheriff of Miller's Crossing, now keeping the peace his father had helped establish all those years ago. Josephine had become an artist, her paintings hanging in galleries throughout the territory. She specialized in portraits of families. Broken families, healing families, families being forged. And Hope, the baby born in the midst of chaos, had grown into a woman of remarkable compassion. She ran an orphanage in Billings, taking in children who had nowhere else to go. All of them came home for Christmas, every year without fail. The house that Sam had built with his own hands filled with laughter and stories and the chaos of grandchildren. This year was no different. Grandpa, a small boy, came running across the yard, his face flushed with excitement. "Grandpa, Aunt Martha is telling stories about when you were young." Sam chuckled. "Is she now? What kind of stories?" "She says you fought outlaws and saved Grandma from bad men and adopted a whole bunch of kids all at once." "That's about right." The boy's eyes went wide. "Was it scary?" Sam thought about the question, about the blizzard and the cabin, about Hale's men and the raid on the mine, about the moment he had turned his horse around and decided to help a crying child instead of riding past. "Yeah," he said honestly. "It was scary. But you know what I learned?" "What?" "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. Being brave means you do the right thing even when you are scared, because some things are worth fighting for." The boy considered this with the gravity that only a 6-year-old could manage. Like family. Exactly like family. "Is that why you have so many kids, Grandpa? Because you were brave enough to fight for them?" Sam felt Caroline's hand slip into his. He looked at her, at this woman who had stood beside him through everything, who had helped him find his way back to life. "Yeah," he said. "That's exactly why." The boy nodded, satisfied. Then he ran off to find his cousins, leaving Sam and Caroline alone on the porch. The sun was setting. Golden light spilled across the valley, painting the mountains in shades of fire and gold. Somewhere in the house, someone was playing piano. Children's voices rose in laughter. "We did good," Caroline said softly. "We did. Any regrets?" Sam thought about the question, about the pain and the loss and the fear, about the choices he had made and the ones he had almost made. "Not a one," he said. Caroline leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, her breathing slow and peaceful. "I love you, Sam Brennan." "I love you too, Caroline Brennan." The fire inside crackled. The children laughed. The stars began to emerge overhead, and Sam Brennan, the broken man who had learned to heal, held his wife's hand and watched the sunset paint the sky. Family wasn't about blood. Family was about who you fought for, who you cried for, who you lived for. And in the end, that was the only legacy that mattered. Not money or land or buildings. People. Lives changed. Futures made possible. Samuel Brennan had spent 3 years running from death. Then he found something worth living for, and he never ran again.